Welcome to part 2 of the RADARC talk on ATV and the Portsdown project by Noel Matthews, G8GTZ. If you missed the first part, it's linked down in the video description.
And the final one is the Portsdown project. And this is the project, I think when I came last time, I got a Raspberry Pi doing digital television. That was a very early, almost prototype, but not quite. We knew there was something, we knew that the Raspberry Pi could do something for us, but we hadn't really formulated exactly what. And what we've done since then is developed a project based around the standard Raspberry Pi 3, so 35 quid's worth of computing power. And we have built up around that a system where we sell the PCBs. You've got touch screen control. And the great thing is that it requires some hands-on construction, but the hard bit is done because we actually sell the biggest board is ready populated, and for under £250 all up, you really can, it's an all up digital television transmission system which will beat anything else that's on the market. But the great thing is that you built it, if you like. So this is an overview diagram of it. So the Raspberry Pi 3 does all of the hard work. We take on the Pi 3, there's an extension port, a GPIO extension port. We put that into an extender card, so you can break out all the connectors without blowing up your Raspberry Pi, and then the touch screen goes on there as well. For import, you can either use the Pi camera, so that's your video and audio in, or you can connect a USB dongle. You've seen them on eBay. So you can then use your old camcorder, of which we've all got one sitting in the cupboard under the stairs, and that can go into the Raspberry Pi and produce video. Coming out of the Pi, we've got the main board, which is the filter modulator board, which is this little board, which we sell ready populated, or you can buy the blank board and populate it yourself. And we feed that with the RF signal, which is generated by a thing called a 4351 chip. Now, those of you who know anything about RF will know that things have really changed over the last 5 years, how you can generate signals. This board is available on eBay for £15, and it will generate a fairly clean, good phase noise signal anywhere between about 70 megahertz and 4.4 gigahertz. And you can control it using an Arduino, or control it using a Pi, or control it using a PIC. And so it's a very, very versatile signal source. And in this project, you drive it using the touch screen on the Raspberry Pi to generate the frequency you want. That goes into this board and produces the RF out. We've then done things like the band switching, so you can switch amplifiers and stuff. But it all comes together as a system built around the Raspberry Pi. So in practical terms, it looks like this. Where's the Pi gone? Pi's there. Here's the GPI, that's the breakout board where you can connect stuff to. Here's the big filter modulator board, the synthesizer board, and the touch screen here. As I say, we sell this card, ready populated, but we also do a series of boards, blank PCBs for all of the smaller stuff. And they're available from the BATC shop. Now, if I pass this board around, can you make sure you keep it on the anti-static and don't go probing and poking at it too hard, because it will probably appear in the BATC shop tomorrow again. So please treat the main board with some care. The rest of them are just blank PCBs. I'll pass those around as well.
Is there any reason why you didn't include the next band up? Because if the synthesizer goes that high, the 2.3 gig band.
Yeah. It does work at 2.4, but the filter modulator card that we developed, the balance and the modulator chip, the performance is falling off. The I&Q or the modulator performance is good, but the output is just falling off. But that is probably that's relevant to the final topic I'm going to talk about. So it does these low, very, very narrow symbol rates. So you can run it on 71 megahertz and 146 megahertz. You can take it and use it on GB3HV on 70 SEMS, which requires 2 megahertz, and also you can use it on 23 SEMS to generate 4 megahertz. So it does the full range of symbol rates. It does MPEG-2 and MPEG-4 encoding. The touch screen you've got here, you can see. It's got analog video out or generates test patterns, and this actually is a signal from that Portsdown coming into this receiver. So it generates this test card automatically with my call sign on it. But the guy who developed Portsdown has got a bit carried away just recently. First of all, for those of you who that means anything, the code is on GitHub, so we're encouraging a community development, and he is welcoming people to come along and do stuff. The first thing he did, he realized that he had got this Wonder chip in there, which will go up to 4.4 gigahertz. And so there is a screen on there, which I can show you, which is purely a signal generator. So in the Portsdown transmitter, you can drive that up to above 4 gigahertz. So it's a signal generator. He's just done the code to implement the attenuator. There are attenuators you can buy on eBay, programmable attenuators. So that's a pretty reasonable spec signal generator, which covers from, I forget what the bottom frequency is, it's somewhere around 50 megahertz up to 4 gigahertz. Somebody else, a guy over in Ireland, said, do you realise that if there's an RTL dongle on the Raspberry Pi, and you all know what I mean by one of these receiver dongles, if you have one of those on the Pi, somebody else somewhere had written the code for a Spectrum monitor. And this guy in Ireland said, I just made it work on my Portsdown. Do you want the code? And so now in here, there is a Spectrum monitor. In real time. Because there's an RTL dongle in there, it's also got an FM receiver, or well, actually a receiver because it will receive sideband or whatever. So you can do an FM receiver in there. He's looking at putting in DVB-S2, which is a higher order modulation, and all of this just comes as standard. So the software is downloadable off the web. So actually the first stage is if you've got a Raspberry Pi 3, you can go and download the software and play with it, and there is actually even a test mode for digital television using the fact that a Pi will generate radio frequencies. You can do a 70 SEMS test transmitter. We don't recommend it, but you can see it working. There is a bigger screen on it. There's a 5-inch touchscreen, which is very nice, as well as the small touchscreen. So that's something the community are doing. But one of the things we're very careful about is we're making sure it's sort of approachable by everybody or accessible by everybody. So hence the boards that are going round, very simple to use. On the BATC forum, there are pages and pages of help. If you've got a question, people just pile in and help all the time. It's all documented on the BATC wiki pages. We haven't written a single piece of paper for this, which is great. So all the documentation is done on the wiki, but the whole project is being done by the community for the community. And at the last count a couple of days ago, we'd actually got 248 users, I think it was. And by that, somebody who's bought, we say buy a Raspberry Pi and we will sell you the SD card. You don't even have to go and download the software. We will sell you an SD card ready programmed. You plug it into the Pi and we guarantee it will work. Of course, we had some clever people who thought they knew what they were doing. There are certain things we say, don't connect a keyboard, don't connect an HDMI monitor. Of course, it's always the clever people who do. I could name one of them. He lives in Didcot. Dr. Mike. He, and we just had to say to them, sorry, back to square one, start again. Because what we've done is we've drawn a box around it and said, if you do this, we will guarantee we will get it working for you. As soon as you start going off piste, we can't support you. But we've got, as I say, about 250 people around the world who have bought major components. That's how we judge that. This guy here 3D printed a complete housing for his. Featured on TX Factor 15, and it was in Radcom last year. And these are the types of, New Zealand, Japan, people are buying it and using it. So, but in the UK, we must have sold about 150, and significant number to France as well. So. Who's that? There's 2 or 3 of them actually. Yeah. There's a group. That's what we find actually. You get 3 or 4 in an area, and they will build for each other. It's the guy in Scotland. There's a couple of guys in Scotland. I mean, there's a guy in Aberdeen. He is on his own. So that's that. There's just one other thing for amateur television I just want to talk about, and that is some of you may have heard of this thing called SailSat, which is a satellite that will be launched second half of this year. It's being launched by Qatar. It's actually the Qatar equivalent of Sky. It's the satellite they're launching for the World Cup for 2022, which is in Qatar, as you know. And they're launching a series of satellites, and this one, there is the Qatari Amateur Radio Society. One of the members of that is one of the crown princes in Qatar. So every satellite that goes up has got spare TWTs and transmit chains, and there's a big matrix on the input and a big matrix on the output, and they just sit there normally just spare, and they can switch them in and out on a normal satellite. On this particular one, there have been 2 transponders, as they're known, have been dedicated to amateur radio. And the coverage, because it's the significant thing is it's geostationary. Every other amateur satellite, you've had to go, and it was gone. You had 10, 15 minutes, and it's gone. This thing will sit at 26 degrees east, which very conveniently is 2.5 degrees off sky. So that means you can sit there with a satellite dish and your neighbours will never know, the wife will never know, that it's an amateur radio aerial. You can take a standard LNB because it's transmitting. You transmit on 2.3 gigs up, so that's 13 centimetres up, and it's 10 gigahertz down. which is very, very close to standard satellite frequencies. And so you'll be able to run a standard LNB into, if you want to receive the narrowband segment, you'd even be able to use an RTL dongle on the end of your satellite LNB. Or if you wanted to receive TV off it, you can use one of our tuner cards. The coverage is enormous because it's basically covering 1/3 of the world. And it's estimated that around here, certainly an 80 centimetre dish, which is the largest sky dish. People are experimenting. There's a satellite in the same orbit, and they're seeing it with 80 centimetre dishes. So, but this will be going up. There are two transponders. There's a narrowband transponder, which will be for CW and voice. So you'll be able to work anybody in that segment. Will you get bored after a few months? I don't know. I think I might. But there is also an 8 megahertz pipe going up, which is for digital amateur television. So that's why we're excited. They're actually dedicating one of the transponders to digital amateur television. So we're involved in this. We're working with AMSAT DL, who are the main people who are working with the Qatari Radio Club on offering advice. But that's second half of next year. Sorry?
What's that bent pipe transponder?
Exactly that. What you transmit on 2.3 goes round a bent pipe and comes out at 10 gigs. So there's no frequency converter. There is frequency conversion, but there's no conditioning. No, the big concern is that it may suffer from pirating as well. That's because it is a bent pipe. There's no control over it.
It does cover Italy after all.
Sorry?
It does cover Italy after all.
It does cover Italy and Brazil. So those of you who know about Brazil and satellite pirates on 250 megahertz. Yeah, there's some CIA transponders in that part of the world which are open, which are bent pipes, no control. And
so does that mean if somebody transmits too much power, they get a disproportionate amount of the satellite power, or is there some power?
There is AGC. There is AGC. Yeah. So second half of this year, that should be launching. It's going up on SpaceX. So yesterday was pretty good news. Did anybody see that? Wasn't that phenomenal? Absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, but it was just the two coming back and landing split seconds apart. It's just amazing.
Yeah, but the question is, where's the third part?
Yeah, well, it landed off the boat, didn't it? They didn't catch it. Yeah. Yeah.
He's digital. This chap in Aberdeen, is he going to be able to use ducting and?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the hopes that, you know, as we spread the word about digital, there will be some. Yeah. I think he will be fairly lonely, realistically.
The thing is, that my experience, ducting and stuff tended to be a bit narrow band, but if it isn't.
Right. So the problem with ducting and digital TV, or particularly the modes we run a single carrier mode, DVB-S. It doesn't like phase changes and phase distortion. Therefore, what we found is any form of ducting or any form of enhancement it does phase changes. And so we don't get the results you think you might get, which is why Freeview, the terrestrial transmission system from Hannington, uses OFDM, which is the 8 megahertz wide multi-carrier system, which is much more tolerant to multi-pathing and phase changes. But we're kind of cheating. We're using the satellite standard to do terrestrial stuff. So, yeah. Okay, so I think that pretty much brings it. There's lots of web references. If you search for BATC wiki, is probably the most important. I think I've broken the pointer. Oh well. There's a whole raft of this 5.6 gig stuff on there. There's Portsdown. If you wanted to look at the Portsdown again, TX Factor episode 15. So yeah, there's a lot going on. It's a pretty active community. So if I can just encourage a few more of you to get involved, think about a club project on 5.6. It's not exactly expensive, so yeah. Questions?
Did you think of having a go at amateur TV over the EME experiment at Greenhilly?
We did try.
Did you?
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a mag here. That was one of the things we tried. Like it says on the front cover, it says DATV moonbounds ? And we failed because of exactly what we were talking about. The moon is a non-coherent reflector, to use its proper, i.e. nobody's been up there and made it smooth and polished. It's very, 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 very pitted. So even I've got some recordings of FM voice signals coming back off the moon, and they're very loud, but there's a lot of crackling and phase distortion and very rough edges to it. It doesn't sound good. And so we knew once we heard the FM voice coming back that TV wasn't going to work, but we did try.
It's curved the wrong way. You want a concave moon.
You want it polished as well.
You'll just have to wait for a few new craters.
Yeah.
There's no leftover American space stuff up there which you could use to build.
Well, there is actually. They left a 2.5 gig dish up there pointing at the Earth. But of course, if you beamed at it, we had this discussion, if you beamed at that dish, it wouldn't beam back at you, it would take the energy into the feed point, wouldn't it?
Didn't they leave some corner reflectors for laser measurement?
Yeah, there's all sorts of junk up there. But, yes. I could do another talk on Goonhilly if you wished. I've got one in the can somewhere with some recordings. So could have done that. Okay, any other questions?
Have you had any success?
Sorry, I've been standing with my back to you.
No, it's quite all right. Have you had any success receiving, say, GB3HV on any of the commercial SDRs at home, the SDR plays and that sort of thing at all?
So
bandwidth is your problem, I guess.
Exactly that. Nobody has really written the code for SDRs to do TV decode, but there is, for the RTL dongle, there is a thing called DVB Dream. There is, and yes, you can, and people are working on it to improve it. It's about 10 dB worse than doing something properly at the moment, but they'll get there. So yes, and then that actually. The Portsdown with an RTL in it, which that one's got, has got a version of that software in it, so you can in fact receive digital on it. But the performance isn't great, so we don't push it.
You've got a line of sight with HV, so I'll give that a go.
There we go then. Yeah, I'll talk afterwards. Okay, any other? No, good. There you go, Simon.
Are you going to let have a presentation of the links on? Is that? Can we use that on our website?
I sent you a PDF, actually. You can take that, and it's got that page on it.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, well, yeah, I can, as Noel said, I've been building one myself, and it's I thoroughly recommend it. It's great fun. I just haven't got enough time to dedicate to it as I would like, but the forum as well is brilliant. I've sort of asked questions on there, and there's loads of friendly people who give you the right answers and things, so I can thoroughly recommend it. So yeah, on behalf of the club and myself, thank you, Noel, for a brilliant talk. Thank you very much.
Good. And there's all sorts of stuff to come and have a poke and a prod. It'd be really useful if I could have all of those bits back as well. Yeah, exactly.